Hello there. Welcome back to Thriving Generation with Dr. G. It's another exciting day and a good day to thrive. Today, I have with me a thriving professor. She is thriving in every area you can think of. And I'm very, very, very pleased that she's here with us today. Please, if you love what we are doing on this channel, subscribe to the Thriving Generation YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Like this video if you love the content and share with others. Somebody may be blessed by this. Now, let's not drag this any longer. Let's go ahead and meet our guest for today. Dr. Trishnee, welcome to Thriving Generation.
Hi, Dr. G. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I'm extremely happy and grateful for the invitation.
That's amazing. Dr. Trishnee Bhurosy, please introduce yourself to the Thriving Generation and then we'll continue with the conversation.
Sure. So hi, everyone. For those who are watching, my name is Dr. Trishnee Bhurosy, and I'm currently an assistant professor at Hofstra University in the Department of Population Health. And I'm a behavioral scientist by training, and my focus is on improving dietary behaviors with active involvement of community stakeholders. And my line of research is improving dietary behaviors along the obesity prevention, but also along cancer prevention and control as well. And I've been teaching for a long time now. I started my teaching career way back in the day, teaching high school students. And I'm also very passionate about doing my research and mentoring, which I'm doing all of those three things right now in my current position. And I met Dr. G when we were both at Indiana University, where I did my PhD in health behavior. And I'm very happy to be here.
That's amazing. Yes, we are also very happy to have you here. And you are here because I've seen you thrive in your academics. I've seen you gone through so much challenges, and yet you've made it. I've seen you receive several awards. So we want you to share your story with us and let us see what we can learn from it. And maybe if we find ourselves in similar situations, we'll be able to persevere and come out a success just like you are. Well, Dr. Bhurosy, just tell us about your background in terms of educational background to this point. Where did you start from and how did you get to the United States?
So I was born and raised in Mauritius, which is an island located southeast to Madagascar. It's on the other side of the world. It's very far away from the US, actually. It's about 2 days of travel by air. And I was born and raised there, like I just mentioned, and I did my schooling in Mauritius. I did my primary education there, my secondary school, which is, I guess, high school, as you would call it here in the US. And then I also went to do my undergraduate in nutritional sciences, and I also completed a master's degree in nutritional sciences at the local leading national university, which is the University of Mauritius, where I did my undergraduate and my master's. And as I was completing my master's, I was thinking about what will be my next step. And I was always interested in going into a teaching track at that point. And so I took a high school educator position, and I also was still doing research. And I also taught for a bit at the University of Mauritius as a part-time lecturer. And during that time period, I kept thinking about, I want to do more regarding my research, and I wasn't having a clear idea. And during that same time, when I was completing my master's, I remember there was this one time when I came across a research article that was written by my advisor, who was she wasn't my advisor then, I just only knew her by this American professor whom I read this research article by her.
Mm-hmm.
And her name is still Dr. Susan Middlestadt. She's a professor who's retired from Indiana University. But at the time I read her article and I was thinking to myself, it sounds like this professor really knows what she's talking about. And she wrote this article at what was looking at salient beliefs underlying dark green vegetables in African American women. And that kind of research really made me think of, how do you get to that part before you even start designing interventions? And for a long time, I thought of contacting her, but I didn't for nearly 1.5 years because I thought that she might think some weird person from Mauritius is spamming her, and it might not even get to her email for all I know. But after almost 1.5 years, I told myself, I think it's time for me to really consider pursuing or taking a tough decision of looking, whether I can do a research degree somewhere else where I can get that kind of expertise. And at the University of Mauritius, there was no one that I knew of who was a behavioral scientist or someone who did the kind of research that I wanted to do at that time. So I didn't have that kind of mentor either where I was living in Mauritius. So I decided that it's time for me to contact this professor. And I reached out to her and she was very open to the idea. At first, I didn't hear a response for many months. And then once she started talking to me and I think she read my materials, it was kind of a bit, for me, it was a very good surprise in a way that I thought that, oh, she must have really seen something in my applications. And, we didn't even, at that time, I thought she was going to do an interview with me, but nothing of that sort happened. Mm-hmm. We spoke over email. And then one day she asked me over email, do you want to come to Indiana University? Do you want to be my advisee? And I thought to myself, this seems a bit too easy. Is there a catch to it? I kind of thought like maybe things would be a bit more difficult. And I said yes, and there was an assistantship as well, which I would have never been able to afford coming to the US without the assistantship that my advisor gave me, because I come from a very humble background. My parents come from a very humble background. And I didn't have that kind of money growing up to even consider going abroad. So having that assistantship really helped me. And, my parents helped me pay the airfare and I got to the US, to the Midwest in Bloomington, Indiana. And that was when the grilling process started from Dr. Middlestadt. When I reached to Bloomington, I remember very well my first meeting with her was when she actually really grilled me and really kind of, I felt, was the interview taking place. But she started asking me questions like, what do you understand by research? What do you plan to do? What is a research question that you're considering doing? And I didn't have no idea.
After you were in the US.
And I was thinking, oh no, maybe I need to run away. But I had only one-way ticket, so I came to the US, but I didn't buy a return ticket. So
because you are going nowhere. You've come to stay. That's amazing. Yeah. I really love that story of wanting to pursue something somewhere nobody, you have no idea, you have no resources at that time, but you take an initiative. So tell us about the preparation period. How did you get to the point where you decided that, okay, I want to go to the US and I'm going to apply and I'm reaching out to this person? You talked about reading her articles, but I'm sure you might have prepared in a certain way to get your even materials appealing enough that no interview, they said, come over, we are willing to pay for your tuition.
It was definitely a process. I remember that I was thinking of going to a country closer to Mauritius at first, going to Australia maybe, which is much nearer Mauritius at first. And for some reason, it didn't work out. I couldn't find a scholarship, for instance. When I applied to the Australian universities, I found that my application was going to get accepted. But at the same time, the programs told me that there wasn't enough funding for like a full scholarship. And I knew that when I converted the Australian money in terms of Mauritian rupees, that was a lot of money, which I knew neither me or my parents had.
Yeah.
And I went back to revisit the idea of the US. And at the same time, I met someone who had come to the US. She was living in the United States. She's a Mauritian. She came to Mauritius for some vacation. And my brother's friend who had gotten to do an undergraduate at Princeton in the US, he kind of told me that, oh, there is this lady who came from the US. Maybe you should talk to her and see, what does she have to say? Just show her your resume. Maybe she would know whether you might have the skills or the background to do a PhD. And I went to meet this other lady, and she was the one who really encouraged me. She said, wow, Trishnee, look at your resume. You've published, you've done some research, and you've taught at high school, you've taught at the university. And I think you really have a strong skill set. And that's what I think the US programs are looking for in a potential PhD student. And that was when she told me that. I was like, really? I was like, do you think this would really fly? And she said, well, here is the deal. She told me that you have to go to the US Embassy, try to gather information about what would the application entail. And she kind of like showed me the path, and it was up to me whether I was willing to walk on that path or not. So I went to the US Embassy and I made an appointment with an educational, and I think it was the educational advisor. I think that's the title. I met with them and they told me that, well, you would have to do a GRE, you would have to write a personal statement, you would have to craft a resume, you might have to do evaluation of your existing transcripts because it might not be recognized by the US. So I took all of this information and really took down like, okay, I need to do the GRE at least 8 months before I'm starting to maybe send in a formal application. And I started, looking, there were books at the US Embassy that I also browsed through. I also went to my local library. I bought a few books on GRE prep and how to write a personal statement and those kind of books to just help me. And I had no one to really like hold my hand, like show me how to write a personal statement. It was just kind of teaching myself on the fly. I was going through this process. And now when I look at my personal statement, I was like, oh no, this sucks. What was I doing? What did I write? But that's how I it was like meeting someone who showed me the path or kind of encouraged me like, no, I think you can really do this. And then I took the leap of, let me find out what I can find out at the US Embassy and try to gather more details. And then I put in my application, I think through SOFAS, I think that's what it's called. And then I had selected Indiana University and Dr. Midostad as my advisor. Also, I wrote about her in my personal statement. And I had also emailed to her saying to her that I have formally applied to the PhD program in health behavior. And here are my application materials as well. And I would love to connect with you. And, it was a very individualized email. I just sent her a generic email. That's one thing I would also say when you're contacting people. Maybe you find someone that you want to work with. I would say never send them a generic email because the person can really tell if you're not being genuine or not. Yeah. Or if you just like wrote a copy paste email that you're just sending to everyone across the board. For me, it was very much like I did this in Mauritius. And, when I was looking through this part of my master's thesis, I connected with this thing you said in your paper that you published. And I actually cited this in my dissertation thesis. It wasn't something I made up. And I was like, I want to learn more about this kind of methodology you picked up in your own studies. Yeah. So it was not really something generic.
Yeah, let me ask about the US Embassy. Is that a paid service or free service? I had never heard of that before.
I didn't pay anything. I mean, I paid for the books that I bought at the library. But as far as I remember, I didn't pay for making an appointment with an educational advisor. At least that's how it works when I did it at the time in Mauritius. Okay. I just like emailed, there was an email address for the educational advisor. I emailed them And then they asked me if I want to do an appointment, I can come in, and I had scheduled an appointment with them. But the US Embassy in Mauritius, I remember it was a very strict environment. You had to leave all your bags, your belts, and everything behind, and it's only you entering the premises. But there was like a library of books there where you could browse through some like samples of GRE test or personal statement, or even books about, college life in the US.
What is the US? I don't know why I didn't know that, but I didn't. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, you could actually reach out and get information on that. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. So let's talk about after you got accepted. Was it very easy for your family? How did it? I know that traditionally you had some expectations that family expected of you, and then you also had your goals that you wanted to pursue. So how did you navigate that? Give us that background and how you navigated to make your way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting part of my life, because for a long time growing up, I kind of embraced the more or less conventional role that was expected of me as a young woman. At the age of 25, I'm going to find a husband. And, I studied up to my master's, which is really good for my overall picture as a wife and, leading woman of a family. And, I kind of embraced that role for a certain part of my life. But at the core of myself, when I started really questioning what I really wanted at that time, it wasn't a marriage that I wanted. That's what the answer came when I questioned myself. I really wanted to pursue my career and see where it would lead me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anyone in my life at that point either, but, someone that I could see myself settling down with. And I thought to myself, well, now that's the time to really do something to pursue my career. And I remember that my parents got a shock at first when I told them that I want to go abroad to do my PhD. And it was something that none of my family members had done, my cousins. I was the first person, I think, who even thought of taking this kind of step, especially as a girl. And I think that came as a bit of a, I wouldn't say a taboo subject, but maybe something that people didn't really actively sought out to do. Mm-hmm. And my mom was very reluctant at first. My dad was the one who got on board at first, and he was very encouraging. My dad and my mom have always been but two people who always told me that the key to success in life, the key to get out of poverty is education. Yeah. It's not money. It's not all those other materials. It's education. And they've always told us this since I remember I was a child. My parents, especially my mom, would always say, study hard, work hard, concentrate on your studies. You want to become independent. You want to stand up on your feet. And I think that kind of stayed with me since I was a child. Yeah. And I was telling my mom, but you were the person who always encouraged me, and I want to do this now. Please let me go. Please let me do my stuff. Mm-hmm. And eventually my parents came on board with it. And I think it was a very tough decision, both for my parents and for me, to be separated, because I was always with them all the time. Yeah. But it's one of those decisions that sometime in life, you have to make a decision for yourself and maybe not look back, because you might have regrets. Maybe, I don't know if it was the best decision that I have ever taken in my life, but at that point in my life, it felt that I really needed to do this for myself to see where it leads me. And I feel very confident in my ability to have taken this step. And I had never traveled abroad. I remember that when I was still at the airport on the day where I was leaving my family members, it's probably the hardest thing I have done in my entire life. Yeah. Leaving my full family behind. I was very shaken up, and I had even never seen a plane before. I had never sat in a plane before. I knew nothing about the outside world that was waiting for me, outside the island. Yeah. It was very I still have a lot of emotions just thinking about that time where I left my whole family behind and just set out on this journey alone on my own.
Yeah, I'm sure they are proud of you right now. They look back and they are happy you made this decision. I've seen you receive several awards. Can you share some of them and how we can position ourselves in such a way that we will succeed in this area?
Mm-hmm. For me, it was, I don't know if other people might have a similar trajectory, but for me, it was, I came to Bloomington, Indiana, and I wanted to explore this new place. I wanted to see where, what other kind of opportunities that are around me. As an international student, you're restricted by the amount of jobs you can do, the number of hours you can do on an F1 visa, or even you are restricted to doing on-campus jobs as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I found ways where, where can I get those extra skills and opportunities? Maybe I can volunteer in the local community. Maybe I can just connect and see, if I get involved with a certain agency, maybe I could get some skills. I could also help improve the health of those communities that I was getting involved with the organizations. I did also some mentoring with the big brothers, big sisters for a while. I also worked for a while with volunteered with the Area 10 Agency for Aging in Indiana. I also prepared meals at the local community kitchen in Bloomington, which I think for me, it was also a way of getting rid of my loneliness, to be honest with you. There were times when I cried in my apartment, just feeling really lonely. And for me, going out there and just using my time in service instead of crying at home was a way to keep my brain busy instead of just being, just feeling pity for yourself, just get out there and occupy yourself. So I was getting into that kind of zone. And when it came to those awards, when I applied for some scholarships, as I was an international student too, I didn't have a lot of money, even if I was getting an assistantship. So I thought that, I can leverage the skills that I have learned and apply for extra scholarships, some financial aid that I can get through those awards that would help me pay like my bill. In summer, I didn't have work. There was no teaching. I can save that money to pay my rent and buy food. There were times when I had only $25 in my bank account, and I just lived on beans and rice. And I just it was a very interesting life. But at the same time, I think the awards also gave me extra confidence that I was on the right path. And I remember there was this particular moment where I was awarded the MLK Building Bridges Award at Indiana University. That was a monumental moment for me because I felt that the kind of work that I have been doing has really good value, and I should keep doing that kind of work wherever I end up. That award was a reminder of that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you used your time outside of work, outside of class, to serve the community. And in so doing, you were recognized and you received awards for the work you were doing. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So somebody may be listening to us, the person has goals, the person desires to go to school, but has no resources or confused on how to start, or even intimidated by the fact that I have to travel abroad and leave my family behind. What advice can you give to us?
I would say start researching what are your options, and really ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? And if I want to do a research degree, what kind of PhD do I want to do? There are so many PhDs nowadays. You can do an epidemiology PhD, you can do a PhD in nutrition, you can do a PhD in health behavior like I did, where my research focus was still on nutrition. You can do, there is so many opportunities out there. Which one do you think will help you the most? You might not know based on your knowledge at that time, but it's going to be the right decision. But do some research, look at the program, look at the kind of opportunities that people who have graduated from the program but have gotten it, where are they placed right now, previous graduates from this program, what kind of job have they got? Usually if people from the program are well placed, that's usually a good sign. And, like I was saying, one of the things you could do if there is maybe a education group, or like the US Embassy in Mauritius had, I don't know if they still have that kind of program where you can meet up with an educational advisor. I would encourage you to get out of your comfort zone and make those appointments. It might feel very awkward at first. Maybe you would have to converse in English if English is not your first language.
Okay.
But those kind of small steps start from there. And I also had a lot of anxiety throughout the process, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I was very sure that I wanted to do this for myself, and it was something that I needed to do myself beyond the degree, just to have trust and confidence again in something that I chose to do for myself instead of taking a decision for other people. And I would say, if you watch a webinar by someone who's doing a presentation somewhere, or you read about a professor's article or their work, try to get in touch with them. If they don't respond to you, don't take it personally. They might be very busy. Try to email them. If you email them with a very tailored email as well. Don't send them a generic email. And if they don't respond, try to email them again after 2 weeks and just try to follow up. If they don't respond, I would say maybe don't contact them again, but try to see where you can connect with people, or if you know someone from your country who's gone to the country where you want to go, or a program that you want to be associated with, try to connect with them and try to learn from their experiences. And nowadays you have LinkedIn, right? On LinkedIn, you can even look for people, like what kind of degrees they have done, what kind of certificates they have done before they got to where they are. That can just be a whole different kind of research. You don't have to talk to people, just read their profiles, just read about their background, what kind of research they did, what kind of qualifications they had, or they have been going through before they reach where they are right now.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. A question just came to mind and I can't just let it slip. Would you say that PhD is difficult? What would be your genuine narration of a PhD program? If you are to give somebody your genuine feedback from your experience, of course, the experience will be different from everybody, but what would you say about getting into a PhD program in the United States, the process?
I would say be financially wise, because if you don't have enough money and you come here and you're stranded because your parents, like my parents, had some money, but when you convert it in US dollars, it's nothing, right? So make sure you get a scholarship, especially if you don't come from a wealthy family, because that's what I did. Make sure that you have a solid mentor. For me, it was really my mentor who kind of pushed me to do things. One of the things that Dr. Midostad told me is like, open your mouth. When I first met her, and she was just telling me to show her my teeth. She was just telling me, go out there in the community and speak to people. And I think, that might be a bit harsh when you hear those kind of stuff at first, but at the core, she wanted me to really succeed. And, at one point I didn't even have like money for completing my last year of a PhD. And I got an assistantship from my advisor who paid the last year of my degree. And without that kind of support, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would be mentally exhausted. My mental health would have dipped down more. Another thing I would also say, make sure you remain connected with your family members and loved ones. That's very important. Don't forget your roots. Even if you leave your family and you come to another place, never forget your roots, never forget where you come from, because that's really what is going to keep you grounded. you have to aim for the sky, but don't fly without having your wings very solid. And your wings are going to get solid based on how strong your support and family system is. For me,
Yes.
It's really my family members and loved ones that have kept me grounded. And I would say also make sure you take care of your mental health. But I think, a PhD is a very grueling process in many cases. It takes so much out of you. Sometimes, you lose your hair. I've seen lots of kind of stuff happen to people. I didn't lose my hair, but at one point I gained a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I was sitting for like 10 hours sometime and just writing my dissertation. And then when I look at the scale after, a year, I was like, wow, I neglected my health. And that was a wake-up call for me. Like, yep, you completed your PhD, but now you have like some health issues maybe coming to seek you. So take care of your health, even if you're just getting 30 minutes, get out of the door and walk, whatever it is, something, and get a pet if you can, whether it's a cat or a dog. I think that's going to change your life. For me, when I got a cat here, I think my cat changed my life, to be honest with you. Like, even now when I'm stressed at work, I just come home and I stuff my face in his belly and I just cuddle with him. I just feel like all my worries are melting away.
I see. I cry. And I cried a lot. Oh Lord, throughout the PhD program. Oh, there are some classes we come out there, it's like, well, but every experience is different, and we are not discouraging you from trying, but genuinely prepare before you get into it. And I like something you said about the finances. You had mentioned that you got an assistantship when coming in, and then you just said that your last year you didn't even have money to complete. That is something you have to check. Are they giving you the assistantship for a year, 2 years, 3 years, or the entire program? Sometimes we get too excited when we get the 1 year assistantship, and then we get in and we realize, oh, I don't have money for my second year or my third or my fourth. So thank you for sharing that. Is there any other thing on your heart, on your mind that you want to share with anybody watching us before we end this interview?
I would say, you said crying. I said crying is very good. When your crying is not harming anyone, as long as you're doing actions that are not harming other people. But I think crying in general is very self-liberating, in my opinion. I also cried a lot. And sometimes, you're crying behind closed doors. You're not showing it to your mentors. You're not showing it to your classmates, because you never know whom could take it, in the wrong way. But I think my last parting words would be, if things don't work out, don't feel dejected. Sometimes things happen for a reason. You might not see it right there in the moment, but your eyes will open up and you'll see that it happened for the best. Just give your best, try your best in things. And I think when you really believe in something, that you can do something, even if you get 10 rejections at first, it will work out at one point or the other. If you don't give up and you're doing it in a very truthful way. But by truthful, I mean you're not harassing people. You're not harming yourself. You're taking care of yourself. You're doing things that are meaningful. As long as you remain truthful and meaningful in your initiatives, things will work out.
I agree. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time and the insight shared. I am sure that somebody will be blessed by this. I'm grateful for you, Dr. Trishnee Bhurosy.
Thank you, Dr. G, for inviting me and for allowing me to share some of my thoughts. And I wish you the best of luck in the Thriving Generation YouTube channel. I think it's going to be a great tool for people to just connect and watch not only my videos, but all the other videos that you have been making, all the wonderful wisdom and advice that you've been giving on the channel. And anyone out there, if you're thinking of taking a very difficult task or just making that first step, I wish you the best of luck, and don't give up.
Yeah.
Have faith in yourself.
Amazing. Have faith in yourself. Thank you so much. Viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us and staying with us to the very end. If you loved this conversation, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share with others, and if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do you have questions for Dr. Bhurosy? You can find her on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and other social media platforms. Just look for her name and you'll find her there. You can also click on any of the links that I've provided in the description below. Also, feel free to leave your questions right here in the comments. We will be happy to come back and respond to them. Is there anything on your mind when it comes to applying into a PhD program, or any of the things that we talked about? Or do you want to share something you learned? Put that in the comments below. We'll be back to check them out. Let's get out there and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.